Why do people come to the UK to work? This is an article published by the Home Office showing some of the national stats on immigration in the UK of the year 2022. This is up to date up to about September, November. That's as much information has been gathered, and it's going to be looking at some of the numbers on immigration, workers, visas, a lot relating around health and care workers visas and how many people are actually still coming, as well as highlighting some of the reasons as to why people are coming. And spoiler, there is a huge number year over year of people coming into the UK for specifically working. So let's begin the video. The first thing I want to highlight is a few of the reasons that the Home Office actually demonstrates and shows as to why people are coming and why there's increase and a lot of changing. Some of it is layover from the COVID-19 pandemic, as to a lot of things were stopped back then. So a lot of movements across countries were very, very restricted. So we've seen an influx from 2021 to 2022, but also global events such as Afghanistan, Taliban takeover in Afghanistan, immigrants from Hong Kong, as well as other refugees from Ukraine and other countries undergoing turbulent times at the moment now. So these are a few of the reasons that are highlighted by the Home Office as reasons. But we also know that there are other reasons why people come to the UK to work, study, or live. Just it might be relocation, it might be a better circumstance, it might just be a change of scenery. There are thousands of reasons why people come to the UK. These are just a few that were highlighted by the Home Office specifically. Now, there are some visa categories that have seen huge spikes in numbers and huge increases from 2022 to 2021 to 2019. Particularly, which will be relevant to a lot of us like myself, is the sponsored work, as well as the temporary work visas as well. But let's focus on this temporary work. We'll get into some numbers in a bit as well. These are visas such as health and care visa and your skilled workers visas. They've seen a huge increase in numbers because the UK is also have been more receptive. If you cut through some of the noise that you might see on news and etc., there's actually been huge intakes in immigration, in legal immigration into the UK as well. So just want people to be aware of that as well. So there were about 49,000 grants actually applied for via main applicants that were granted in the UK in 2022. This actually represents a significant increase compared to 2020 and 2021. Now, just to clarify, a lot of this data actually excludes 2020 in terms of when it's looking at some of the numbers, because 2020 is actually a bit of a year where the numbers will not be as relevant to most people, just because of how basically a lot of it was stopped. So there's no movement. So whatever those numbers mean, it doesn't carry as much weight. So a lot of the data actually goes from 2019 to 2021. Just wanted to make that clear. So there were about 249,000 grants to main applicants that were approved in the year of 2022. Now, this is actually very big because compared to 2019 and 2021, this is about 82% and 80% increases compared. So huge numbers, almost double what was seen in those years are now being seen now, which represents a huge number of the work visas that were actually applied for in general. So I'm going to pull your attention to this table, which actually visualizes a lot better than I can explain it verbally. So what you're looking at right now is actually the work-related visas granted to main applicants by visa type. So what you'll see is these are the huge numbers, and this is how they got to 82%. But if we break it down a little bit more, so visa type of a worker visa, what you saw in 2019, then you see an increase significantly in 2022, which represents 81,000 more people applying from those years, which is actually a 128% change, which is the big one that a lot of people will be relevant about. So way more than double for this specific visa class. Now, what actually drags the numbers down is actually temporary workers, still seeing a huge increase of about 80%, 78% specifically. The investor business class is about an increase of 23%. But look at the number as well of people applying for investor and business. It's not as much as the other ones because these are both easier to get and they will appeal to a lot more people generally, as opposed to this investor class. But then also, interestingly enough, Other work visas and exemptions actually saw a decrease of 8%. Now, there are many reasons why this may be possible. We're not here to speculate. We're just here to show numbers and explain a bit of what's happening in this whole space. But as you can clearly see, both worker and temporary worker visas have seen such an increase significantly between the years of 2019 and 2022, which is what I wanted to highlight specifically, as it's such a very growing class of individuals. And I will say Brexit also plays a role in this as well, which is also highlighted in these documents, as to how the stop of free movement is actually made people start having to apply for certain visas as opposed to when they wouldn't before. So there are a lot of conditions that have actually caused this. Trying to pinpoint the exact one is not an exercise that I'm trying to do today, but just be aware. So what I'll do is I'll pull you guys to this graph, which actually shows, goes all the way back to 2013. And you see how significantly, for workers visa specifically, it was going on a trajectory, but it was not as steep as what you see now. Basically all, workers visa specifically, and has just skyrocketed. If you want to pull a graph across, you can see, you pull a line across and say, well, it was going like this. This is huge because obviously 2020, you saw a huge dip, but what you saw is a boom. And there are reasons for this significant increase as well. One is the introduction of the health and care visa, which is what I'm on as well, is the visa I'm on. And that has given a lot of different healthcare professionals, health and social care to be specific, opportunities to actually come within the UK and work. So that is a huge boom of you seeing temporary workers visa as well. The investor in business, interestingly, has basically been about the same, which we're not going to go into that too much. And other workers visa actually seen decrease as we saw, but just this helps visualize the amount and how high it's actually going up basically since in the last couple of years. I'm going to wedge in a little bit of an interesting fact. There are about 3.94 million non-UK nationals currently working in the UK. Naturally, as you expect, as these numbers go up, this is a number that keeps on growing. So just if you're worried, and people think that, their UK is not as immigration friendly as other countries. Yes, it's not maybe the friendliest country to maybe somewhere like Canada, but it still shows a growing number of individuals coming into the UK. So right now we're going to break down the worker visa. Now, if it wasn't clear what the worker visa is, it's going to be clear now. This is where you find the category of the skilled workers visa and the health and social care workers visa. Now, this previously used to be called Tier 2 General, but on the Tier 2 General doesn't exist anymore. So now it's called the skilled workers visa, and it has the subsect, which is the health and care workers visa. Now, this is a segment that has actually seen such an increase, and as I've said before, but let's not talk too much. Let's go into the actual graph, and actually so I can show you what it actually means. Now, if you're wondering what this is the 145,000 people who are within this visa. Now, as I've told you before, you see 2020, this visa didn't exist, so there's no data. But from 2021 to 2022, you can see the huge increase specifically, and what this actually comes into is, as you can see, a bulk of it is divided into the health and care visa and the skilled workers visa, which basically takes up a huge chunk of this specific workers visa. Now, the other visas that you'll see are the within this segment is your ICT related routes and some of the others. I don't know what others are, I'll be honest, but I know it's the ICT related routes. Now, ICT is basically intra-company related visa, so moving global mobility, moving from one company to the other, but we're not going to focus on that. This is the huge one, and I just wanted to show you a visual of it to show you how much year over year it's actually increased in a nice bar diagram. So as I mentioned before already, health and care workers visa makes up a huge chunk. Every quarter since it's actually been introduced, it's just seen an increase, which means more people are applying, and more people are being granted, which is also the important thing. But the question also is, who are these people? What countries are a lot of these visas actually coming from and going to specifically? Let us have a look at the graph, but I will tell you now already, the number one is India. So a lot of Indian nationals are the ones primarily applying for a lot of these health and care visas, a lot of these skilled workers visas specifically. But let's look at the chart. As you can see, India has, from 2019 to 2022, 90% increase in people coming from India, which actually goes from 29,000 to about 56,000. The next runner-up country is the Philippines, which is seen at also 93%. Let me just tell you this now, as you're looking at this chart as well, you can see the huge numbers of people in terms of percentages. But Nigeria, which is where I'm from as well, I did not expect this. I've seen an increase from around 2,000 to almost around 10,000 within a 2-year span, representing about 399%, specifically for this worker visa. So we're not talking about other visas, we're talking about the worker visa now. Interestingly as well, I did not see this coming as well. Zimbabwe, from only 499 people using the workers visa to about 8,000 currently, which represents 1,576%. And some of the other countries that are interesting. Interestingly enough, people from the United States have actually gone down, seeing an 11% drop, and other nationalities, 168%. So as a whole, just a huge increase across the board. But the Nigeria and the Zimbabwe one I did not see specifically coming, because the number, the jump is just very, very big. Well, I guess I'm part of that number, to be honest. I make up that case as well. But you can see India still is number 1, Philippines number 2, and the rest follow. So very briefly, we will touch on the temporary workers visa as well, which has also seen a 78% increase. Now, this visa specifically actually covers your seasonal workers, also involves youth mobility schemes, which visas I don't actually cover too much on this channel, but if anyone wants me to cover it, I can have a look and see how relevant it is and see what I can provide. But this is also another visa category that has also seen an increase, no shocker there. But it is specifically for seasonal workers and visas that generally don't lead to naturalization. These are your shorter term, you come in for X amount of period and then you probably head back home and then you come back again maybe the next year. And this is also a very popular route apparently as well. Again, I was not too familiar with it prior. Interesting fact, in 2022 April, there were about 5 more global business mobility visas that were actually introduced. And these saw a number of people coming in, such as secondment workers, trainee workers. And these are small numbers, but it's very interesting niche visas that people can apply for. But if you don't know these visas exist, you will not apply for them. That's just it. I'm going to put their names right beside me so that if any of them interest you, you can go and look at the document more and find out more information. But I just thought it was interesting to highlight. So there are 2 other categories that I'm not covering very much, which is your investor business visa and the other category, because these are visas that can be explored in their own depth, very much so. But also there is one segment of this which is dependent. So basically, when people come to the UK, how many people are they bringing with themselves? Shocker, this number has also increased, but I'm not going to do that in this video. We can look at that in a separate video talking about dependents and people bringing families and people who they support with them across. But we will wrap the video up today. If you are interested in this video or want to know more about it, you can have a look at the actual documents and read it more in depth. I've just summarized some things that I thought was interesting for myself. So hope you enjoyed the video. Take care.